Welcome to the deep dive. So, have you been scrolling through Instagram or TikTok lately
Oh, yeah.
and seen those posts? The one saying, scientists say humans could become immortal by 2030.
Right. Those have been everywhere. Pretty attention-grabbing stuff.
Totally captivating, isn't it? This idea of, living forever, it's gone viral, and a lot of them point to IBM.
IBM's brain simulation work
Mm-hmm.
from back in, what, 2014.
Exactly. Like that's the proof consciousness transfer is, like right around the corner.
And you see these graphics maybe attributed to things like Wealth magazine, not exactly Nature or Science.
Right. Makes it look kind of official, even though it's maybe not a scientific source.
And that's really why we're here today, isn't it? To kind of cut through
Let's
that.
do a deep dive.
Exactly. We want to really look at the actual science behind these huge claims, help you understand what really happened in the lab versus, what the viral posts want you to believe.
Okay, so what's the plan? How are we going to unpack this?
Well, we'll start with IBM, figure out what they genuinely did, then maybe look at the futurists, often tied to this, like Kurzweil.
Yeah, his predictions.
Then we'll touch on where things actually are with brain-computer interfaces, real longevity research.
And that big question lurking underneath it all, consciousness itself.
It's quite a journey, but we'll stick to the facts.
Great. So let's start with those viral claims. What's the basic story everyone's sharing?
The common narrative is pretty straightforward. IBM simulates a whole human brain in 2014. Check.
Implying consciousness transfer is possible.
Right. Then, add a decade of research, and boom, immortality by 2030.
It definitely hits a nerve. Fear of death, hope for more.
It taps right into those fundamental human things. But the science, that tells a very different story.
Okay, so let's get into that gap. What did IBM actually achieve back then?
Right, so IBM's work, it was significant, genuinely groundbreaking for its time, but in neuromorphic computing. In 2011, their Blue Gene supercomputer simulated about 4.5% of a human brain's cortex. So roughly 1 billion neurons, 10 trillion synapses.
Which, I mean, for 2011, that still sounds massive.
It absolutely was.
Yeah.
A huge computational feat, gave real insight.
And they scaled it up.
But 2012, yeah, they got the numbers up 530 billion neurons, 100 trillion synapses. That matches the scale of a human brain, numerically speaking.
But there's a catch, I'm guessing?
A big one. The simulation ran 1,500 times slower than real time.
Whoa. Say that again.
1,500 times slower. So what your brain does in 1 second.
Would take the computer, what, like 25 minutes?
Exactly. So you've got the map, maybe, but you're crawling through it, not driving.
Okay, that distinction is huge. Scale versus speed.
Precisely. And current work, it focuses on smaller, more detailed circuits, trying to get the speed and efficiency better. But a whole brain, real time, we're nowhere near that.
And crucially, IBM wasn't trying to upload consciousness.
Never. That was never the goal they stated. Their focus was understanding brain function, building new kinds of computers, efficient processors, basic science and advanced computing.
So the leap from simulating networks to transferring minds, that's just not what the research was about.
It's a fundamental misunderstanding, yeah. Or maybe wishful thinking projected onto the research.
Which brings us neatly to the wishful thinking part, maybe. Because a lot of this immortality talk seems to circle back to one particular futurist.
You mean Ray Kurzweil?
That's the one. He's made some incredibly bold predictions, hasn't he?
Oh, absolutely. Kurzweil's vision is, well, it's expansive. He talks about nanobots repairing cells from the inside.
Tiny robots in your blood.
Brain-computer interfaces merging our minds with the cloud. And this concept he calls longevity escape velocity.
Where life expectancy starts increasing faster than time passes.
Basically, yeah. Adding more than a year to your expected lifespan every year. It's all based on his idea of exponential technological growth, things speeding up faster and faster.
And he's had some hits predicting things.
He has. He foresaw the internet's ubiquity, smartphones, advances in speech recognition. Pretty good calls there.
But not everything panned out.
Not by a long shot. He predicted self-driving cars being common by 2009, computers passing the Turing test by 1998, VR being indistinguishable from reality by 2019.
Okay, so some misses too. Big ones.
And importantly for this topic, his predictions about radical life extension, immortality, those dates keep getting pushed further out.
So is the issue that biology just doesn't follow Moore's law? Like, you can't just expect exponential growth in fixing something as complex as a human body.
That's a really core problem, I think. Biological systems have layers of complexity, interactions, sort of emergent properties. It's not just about faster chips, which, connects to brain-computer interfaces, BCIs.
Right, because BCIs are real. That's not science fiction. There's actual progress happening there, isn't there?
Absolutely. It's a rapidly advancing field. Real clinical uses helping people with paralysis, neurodegenerative diseases. The market for BCI tech is already significant.
You hear about companies like Neuralink, right? Putting chips in brains.
Exactly. Neuralink is a prominent example. They're developing implantable devices aiming to let paralyzed patients control computers, maybe robotic limbs, just with their thoughts.
How does that even work, roughly?
Well, the implants detect specific patterns of neural activity, the signals your brain generates when you intend to move, for instance. Then they translate those signals into commands for a computer or device.
That's amazing for restoring function, but how different is that from, the sci-fi idea of uploading your whole mind?
Fundamentally different. It's a critical distinction. Current BCIs detect and interpret specific signals. Think of it like learning a few key phrases in a language, enough to give commands.
Okay.
They aren't capturing the whole language, the full richness of thought, memory, emotion, your personality, your consciousness. That's not the goal.
The goal is function, not replication.
Precisely. Restoring lost function, helping people communicate or interact with the world. The sheer scale of the brain, 86 billion neurons, 100 trillion connections.
The complexity is staggering.
Just mind-boggling. Getting from today's BCIs to capturing all of that would require breakthroughs we can't even really conceive of yet, especially in understanding consciousness itself.
Which leads us away from the uploading idea and more towards, actual longevity science. What is happening there? Because progress is being made, even if it's not immortality.
Yes, definitely. While true immortality isn't on the table, the field of longevity research is making real strides in extending health span, the number of healthy years we live, and potentially lifespan, too.
What kinds of approaches are we talking about?
All sorts. Cellular reprogramming, trying to make old cells behave like young ones again, genetic therapies, new drugs, even understanding lifestyle factors better.
Any specific examples that look promising?
Well, there's research on things like NAD plus boosters. NAD plus is crucial for cellular energy and declines with age. Supplementing it has shown some positive effects in lab studies, reversing some aging markers. And gene therapies targeting the hallmarks of aging, things like senescent zombie cells, mitochondrial problems, DNA damage, they're showing some encouraging results in animal models.
So realistically, what might this mean for us? Are we talking about living to 150?
I think the more realistic, though still optimistic, view from many scientists in the field is that adding maybe 10, perhaps 20 healthy years might be achievable in the coming decades.
Healthy years being the key term there.
Absolutely. The focus is shifting towards health span, not just lifespan. But even the most optimistic researchers are very careful to distinguish this from immortality. Extending life is one thing. Eliminating death is something else entirely.
And that brings up, I think, the deepest question in all of this. Even if we could perfectly simulate a brain, map every connection, would that simulation actually be us? Would it be conscious?
You've hit the absolute core of it. That's the fundamental roadblock for any digital immortality idea. We simply don't have a complete scientific understanding of consciousness.
How subjective experience, feelings, awareness, the sense of I actually arises from the physical stuff of the brain.
Exactly. The philosopher David Chalmers called it the hard problem of consciousness. How do you get from neurons firing electrical signals, chemistry, to the feeling of redness or the taste of chocolate or the sense of being you? It's still a profound mystery.
So even a perfect digital copy, we have no idea if it would be conscious, let alone if it would be the same consciousness, the same person.
We don't. Would it just be an incredibly sophisticated simulation mimicking behavior, or would it actually feel anything? Would the original you transfer, or would you just be creating a digital twin while the original you still, faces mortality?
These aren't just tech questions, are they? They're deeply philosophical.
Profoundly philosophical. Questions about identity, existence. Science hasn't cracked them, not even close. Which makes you wonder.
Why these immortality claims spread so easily.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? You see them, and part of you just wants it to be true.
What's the psychology there? Why do these things catch fire online?
Well, it goes back to those deep anxieties and hopes we mentioned. The fear of death is pretty universal. The hope of transcending our limits, living on. It's powerful stuff.
And then you mix in kernels of real science.
Exactly. You take genuine achievements, IBM simulations were real, BCIs are advancing, longevity research is happening, and you sprinkle them into the narrative. It gives the whole thing a veneer of credibility, makes it sound plausible, shareable.
And the social media algorithms love that, right? Things that get strong reactions.
Oh, for sure. Algorithms are designed to boost engagement. Content that evokes strong emotions, hope, excitement, maybe even a bit of fear or wonder gets clicked, liked, shared. It creates a feedback loop.
So the sensational stuff rises to the top.
And neuroscience is complex, right? For someone not in the field, it's hard to tell where the real progress ends and the wild speculation begins, especially when big names like IBM get thrown around.
Okay, so let's ground it again. What are the realistic timelines looking like for, say, brain simulation based on actual scientific assessments?
If you look at recent studies, like some published in 2024, the consensus is maybe. Maybe whole brain simulation of a mouse could be feasible sometime in the 2030s.
The mouse. Okay.
And maybe a marmoset monkey, which has a more complex brain, perhaps in the 2040s.
So we're talking decades just for these much smaller, simpler brains compared to ours.
That's right. And the human brain isn't just a bigger mouse brain. It has unique structures, different organizational principles. The challenges are orders of magnitude greater.
So simulating a human brain.
Yeah.
We're talking many decades, if ever. Forget 2030.
Realistically, yes. Decades of development, likely requiring entirely new scientific insights and computational approaches. You just have to look at something like the Blue Brain project. They've spent over a decade meticulously simulating just tiny slices of a mouse brain. It highlights the sheer, stunning complexity.
But it's important not to dismiss all the progress, right? Even if immortality isn't happening, neuroscience is advancing in meaningful ways.
Absolutely vital to remember that. Genuine, impactful advances are happening. The Human Brain Project, for example, their 2024 roadmap focuses on using digital tools to understand brain function, to find treatments for devastating neurological disorders like Alzheimer's or Parkinson's.
And things like neuroplasticity,
Wow.
helping brains stay healthy.
Right. Research into how the brain adapts and changes is leading to ways to potentially boost cognitive function, maybe slow down age-related decline. Brain training apps, while not a magic bullet, might help maintain sharpness.
And treatments?
Things like deep brain stimulation, other neuromodulation techniques, they're offering real hope and improved quality of life for people with conditions like Parkinson's, epilepsy, major depression. These are huge wins, even if they aren't immortality.
It brings up another angle, though. Even if consciousness transfer is sci-fi for now, if we ever got close, the ethical questions would be enormous, wouldn't they?
Oh, profound. Absolutely mind-bending ethical territory. Even just thinking about it hypothetically.
Like who gets access?
Exactly. Would it only be for the super rich? What does that do to society if some people can essentially live forever, digitally or otherwise, and others can't?
It would change everything. Inheritance, family structures, the meaning of a human life cycle.
The potential to massively increase inequality is staggering. You could literally have a split between mortals and potentially immortals. The social, economic, psychological impacts are almost impossible to fully grasp.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive, let's try and crystallize the main message.
I think the core takeaway is clear. That claim of human immortality being achievable by 2030, it's just not backed up by the science.
IBM's work was real, but it wasn't about uploading minds.
Exactly. It was a computational achievement with different goals. And Ray Kurzweil's predictions, while thought-provoking, remain highly speculative, especially on those timelines.
But the real story isn't boring. It's actually more complex, more nuanced, and maybe even more fascinating in its own way.
Definitely. We've seen real progress. BCIs are making a tangible difference in people's lives now.
Longevity research is finding ways to potentially extend our healthy years.
And neuroscience is unlocking secrets about the brain, leading to real treatments. These are valuable goals in themselves.
So the final thought for you, listening. Maybe it's about developing a healthy skepticism for those viral claims that seem too good to be true.
Yeah, especially the ones promising to solve our biggest fears on a super tight deadline, maybe with flashy graphics from non-expert sources.
Ask those critical questions. Look for the actual science.
Because the future of human enhancement, while it might not include immortality by 2030, really does hold genuine promise for improving health, extending healthy lifespan, enhancing quality of life.
And those goals, they're worth pursuing based on real, rigorous research, not just chasing sensational headlines.
The true science, step by careful step, is ultimately far more interesting and definitely more valuable than the fiction.